Also, I need water at a minimum for the toilet alone. Internet's also important. I am disturbingly over budget. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's really awkward for a guy to use the word ladies. Ladies? Yeah, that's a little creepy. We've got ourselves a
pivot! 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 Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
It's official. We're a portfolio update channel now. And consider this video a behind the scenes look using charts. I have a few different charts here. This one is probably the most important. To the left of the dotted line here is my cash position. This column here represents where I sleep at night. We'll get into that. And then I'm showing debt here as a negative cash position. That's why it's going down. Now the place where I sleep is not a liquid position, nor is it cash, but I do own the title to this property. And if I sold it, I would have access to approximately $275,000. So in my head, I think about it as a debt offset. Though I'm being a little simplistic, it's not really that cut and dry. Right next to that is the current cash position, which is much larger than normal. And that's what she said. Now, cash clearly is more of a literal offset to the debt. And over the course of the next 11 months will be used to invest on stuff on the right side of this chart. Also to put food in my mouth and to keep the lights on. Also, I need water at a minimum for the toilet alone. Internet's also important. You get it. Most importantly, it will not be used to pay down any of the debt. But why? The only thing that matters is the ratio of my debt to the equity I have. More specifically, I care about my safe withdrawal rate relative to the cost of servicing my debt. All right, so now I have my M1 account pulled up. All my debt is borrowed against my main portfolio, and that's a risk that we'll get into on this channel. However, the debt only cost me 2% interest, and I'm not forced to put anything towards the principal or even the interest for that matter. This type of leverage allows me to increase future returns with some caveats. Here's an example. If I borrow $1, that would cost me 2 cents a year. And if I use that $1 to buy an asset that has a 10% return, which might be easier said than done, fair critique. But assuming it to be true, I can earn 10 cents for the cost of 2 cents. And here's the key. The 10 cents will continue to compound each year, while the 2-cent cost on that capital will continue to remain the same. That is if I continue to make the interest payments each month. Now, capitalizing on that spread can be quite lucrative. And it's also how the very rich avoid taxes. So there's that. But what about the risk, Mr. Lemonsworth? Please, you can call me Nick. My father, his name was Mr. Lemonsworth. All right, so the takeaways here. I have $435,000 in debt. The base rate on that is 2%. That's how much interest I pay. What matters here is this. So if my portfolio drops by 45% or $546,000, then M1 can force me to sell my stocks to cover what I have borrowed. And if that happens, I'd be selling stocks at quite possibly the worst time. The very time I should be buying stocks hand over fist could be the exact time in which M1 can force me to liquidate my portfolio, which would be devastating. Is it possible that my portfolio could drop by that much? Well, of course it could, but I do have some margins of safety. The oversized cash position and separate portfolios I have outside of M1 that are not levered could be somewhat of a buffer from the catastrophic failure of my investment. And then there's the capital in my condo. However, the event that causes my portfolio collapse could also make it quite difficult to access that capital. Now, preemptively, I could secure a HELOC to act as some portfolio insurance. There's also other ways to access the capital that don't involve new debt. We'll save that for another video. And then I could also get a job, I guess. All right, the takeaway is not the size of this debt. It's how you use it that matters. That's what she said. 2 That's What She Said jokes. 1 video. That's goddamn talent right there. Okay, so for more clarity, we're looking at debt to cash here. Remember, my condo is bought and paid for, and technically it's an appreciating asset. That appreciation somewhat offsets any debt interest I have to pay. I think that's an important thing to consider. So this column all the way to the right represents my equity in my condo. If you stack this real estate column on top of the cash column, it nearly completely offsets the debt. That's one way to think about it anyways. It helps me sleep at night, at least thinking about it this way. All right, this next chart is super fun. The good times you're about to have listening to me explain this can't be quantified. You can't quantify this. First column here on the left represents the goal budget for the year going forward. This next column here represents my expenses for the month of August. Now, looking at this, you may be able to visually extrapolate. If you can imagine multiplying this expense column by 12 months, you'll quickly calculate I am disturbingly over budget. The silver lining for me is that for the month of August, there were a lot of one-time expenses. And then there's also reoccurring expenses that I expect to drop off by the end of the year. Guys, side note, have you been hearing about these buy now, pay later companies? Amazon's partnering with a firm, their stock went through the roof. Square just bought some Australian company. Anyways, remember that $4,000 bike that I talked about in the last video that I no longer possess? Yeah, that one. Well, the payment plan did not get stolen, and I have 5 more easy, interest-free payments to look forward to. Point being, I'm in much better shape than the chart suggests, but I'll continue to keep an eye on this, and I'll continue to update you on the progress. Now, on the right side of this chart is my income for the month of August. At this very moment, that income does not pay or go towards expenses. My cash position we spoke about earlier is where those expenses are getting paid from. What I'm doing for this year is reinvesting all this income back into the portfolio. This tiny sliver here all the way to the right represents the interest I earned in August, and it amounts to about $237. 100% of that is going to get reinvested back into cryptocurrencies. The slightly larger column to the left represents my dividends for the month of August, which contributed over $600 this month, and all of it was reinvested back into the portfolio. This last column here represents my rent collected for August. It's $1,015, and all of that gets reinvested too, but it's more based off the budget. For example, for every dollar that I'm over budget, effectively gets removed from the rental income pie. Hence the importance of focusing on the budget so that I can use all that rental income to grow future returns. Now, rent, dividends, and interest should all increase over time. Interest, I don't really count on that much because it's really difficult to predict what the interest market is going to look like into the future. But because I'm increasing my allocation in assets that produce interest, it's safe to say in the short to medium term, my interest accumulation will increase. In fact, by October, I believe I'll be receiving over $400 in interest a month. And again, all of that goes back into purchasing more cryptocurrencies. Dividends increase as I invest more into companies that produce dividends. That's obvious, right? But they also increase as the companies that I own increase their payouts over time. Rental income should follow a similar trajectory. It should go up year on year. And then as my portfolio increases in size, I can use more leverage to have much larger jumps in rental income in the future. And this chart illustrates how my dividend income has increased over time. You're looking at a 3.5-year period here. This black line is the actual payouts that I received month in and month out, going back to January 2018 to current day. Blue columns on the chart are just average monthly income. And then the chart projects 4 months into the future. On the end here, it's extrapolating dividend growth based off prior returns. Seeing how this gradually increases over time is super cool, I think. But it's important to not get too caught up in this. For one, the overwhelming vast majority of my wealth has not come from companies that produce dividends. And frankly, dividends are a pretty inefficient way for me to collect my equity. And we'll talk about what I mean by that on this channel in future videos. This chart is showing my crypto allocation in dollars for the month of August. Every day I have automated trades set. Each day, a little slice of the stable coin gets sold and traded for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And as previously mentioned, I earn interest on all 3 of these coins, and that interest gets paid back in Bitcoin. Also, I have a credit card attached to this account that rewards me back automatically in Bitcoin. So to put that another way, I buy something and a percentage of that purchase gets paid back to me in the form of Bitcoin. That Bitcoin then earns interest, and that interest is paid back to me in more Bitcoin. If you're curious about a setup like that, and you should be, go ahead and check out BlockFi. I've got my link in the doodly-doo, the thingamabob, the description down below. Go to the link in the description down below. It helps support the channel, and we both get something free out of it. So what we call on this channel a win-win. It's a win-win. Last chart, guys. This is one way I assess my ability to safely retire and live off of my portfolio. The first column you've seen before, it's my expenses for the month of August. Again, there's a lot of one-time expenses in here. Next column is showing how much rent, dividends, and interest I collected for the month of August. Clearly, it's not enough to cover the expenses for the month. Again, it's worth noting that expenses are artificially high this month, and the income is being reinvested back into the portfolio, while the expenses are being covered by my cash position. And the cash position are from the cash reserves from the Grand Fund, and the Grand Fund is what we spoke about in the previous video. However, if I was truly living off my portfolio, I would framework my withdrawal strategy based off the 4% rule. Now, none of the research for the 4% rule truly applies to my portfolio or my situation, but using it as a framework for this thought experiment, my expenses are well covered. So I'm happy about that. And what gets included in this 4% rule income column here? It's 4% of my portfolio divided by 12 to get the monthly allotment, minus whatever dividends I received, because I don't want to double count my capital. And then I add the rental income on top. That's what this column represents, and it covers the expenses. All right, I think we're done with charts. If you're into this sort of thing, I'll be doing an update exactly like this, month in, month out, to see how I'm progressing or regressing. Hopefully not regressing. So the update for the month of September should be coming out in a few weeks, but if you can't wait that long, I understand that. Come back for the portfolio updates, which I will do weekly on this channel. And guys, if you've made it this far, holy shit. Hit the like button, subscribe, tell me what the hell you're thinking in the comments. My name is Nick. This is my lemonade stand. Now get the hell out of here.